Welcome everyone. If you're here right now, it means one thing: there's something you want to learn. Maybe it's English, public speaking, coding, business, or music. But deep down, you've felt that frustration. Why can't I learn fast like others? Why do I keep forgetting? Why does learning feel so hard for me? Maybe I'm just not smart enough. That voice in your head is lying. You are not broken, not dumb, not slow. You were just never taught how learning actually works. We live in a world that forces people to memorize things they don't care about, punishes them for forgetting, and judges them for not being intelligent enough. But the truth is, our entire learning system is upside down. We were never shown how the brain learns, how to break skills down, or how to make learning fast and enjoyable. We were taught to suffer, not to understand, to repeat, not to rethink. But today, that changes. This isn't about impressing you, it's about freeing you. To erase confusion, remove shame, and give you a real map to learn anything. The problem isn't you. It's the method you've been using. And now, you'll learn the most powerful and practical system proven by science and success. First, decide exactly what you want to learn. The biggest mistake people make is being vague. I want to learn English. I want to get better at drawing. I want to be good at marketing. Those are wishes, not goals. The brain doesn't respond to wishes, it responds to clarity. Think of your brain like a GPS. If you type somewhere nice, it won't work. But if you type, I want to speak English confidently with native speakers in 6 months, the brain says, got it, let's go. Be specific. Instead of saying, I want to learn English, say, I want to master 10 daily conversation topics this month. Or, I want to understand 80% of an English movie without subtitles. Or, I want to confidently introduce myself in under 1 minute. That's real learning because now your brain knows exactly where to aim. The brain is a goal-driven machine. When it has a clear target, it activates your focus system and says, this matters. Remember this. Clarity creates speed. People who are vague stay stuck. People who are specific move fast. Before you start learning, ask, what exactly do I want to do? What does success look like in 30 days? Can I explain my goal simply? If not, pause. The first step of learning isn't reading books or watching videos. It's defining your goal so clearly that your brain knows exactly what to build. That's the start of unstoppable learning. Next, deconstruct the skill like a tree. You don't learn a forest, you learn a leaf, then a branch, then the tree. Most people try to learn the entire skill at once. They repeat, struggle, get overwhelmed, and quit. Instead, break it down into small, digestible parts. If you're learning English speaking, don't just memorize whole speeches. Break it down. The root is vocabulary. The trunk is sentence structure. The branches are topics, introducing yourself, asking questions, telling stories. The leaves are tone, confidence, pronunciation, speed. Work on one small part at a time. Focus for a few days on introductions, then on talking about hobbies, then on asking questions. Each sub-skill is small, measurable, and learnable. This works because the brain learns faster through chunking. Dividing big ideas into smaller parts improves memory, confidence, and speed. It also reduces anxiety. You stop saying, I have to learn everything, and start saying, I'm mastering this one piece today. That's how winners learn: calm, focused, consistent. For example, if you're learning guitar, don't try to play the full song. Learn the chords first, then the transitions, then rhythm and expression. 3 days on one chord, 3 days on transitions, 4 on rhythm. Soon, the full song flows naturally because you built it from the roots up. Learning is like growing a tree. Start with the root, then the branch, then the leaves. Don't try to grow the whole forest in one day. Then use first principle thinking, not blind copying. If you don't understand something deeply, you'll always depend on someone who does. Most people open YouTube, find the top video, and copy what the expert does. They memorize the words and steps but never understand why it works. Then when life changes slightly, they freeze. Blind copying feels productive, but it kills real learning. It builds dependence, not intelligence. So instead of asking, how do others do it? Ask, what is true here? Why does this work? Build from the ground up. That's how Elon Musk learned rocket science without being a rocket scientist. He didn't ask, how do other companies make rockets? He asked, what are rockets made of? How do they work? What's the real physics behind this? By questioning the foundation instead of copying the surface, he reinvented an entire industry. The wrong way is to copy-paste. The right way is to understand the reason. Don't just repeat what your teacher, boss, or mentor says. Ask why. Why do we open with a question? Why does the client pause here? What emotion is driving that reaction? Once you think this way, you stop memorizing and start mastering. You stop being a follower and start becoming a thinker. Because when you use first principles, you don't just learn fast, you learn forever. You can create your own method, your own ideas, your own breakthroughs. You move from asking, how do they do it? To saying, here's how I will do it and here's why. That is the beginning of mastery. Spend twice the time doing, not watching. You don't learn to swim by watching a video, you learn by getting wet. Let's destroy one of the biggest lies in modern learning. If I consume enough information, I'll become smart. No. If that were true, everyone with a YouTube account would be rich, everyone who watched gym videos would have six-pack abs, and everyone who listened to English podcasts would be fluent. But they're not, because watching is not learning. Listening isn't fluency. Reading isn't transformation. Here's the real truth. You learn when you implement. You grow when you apply. You must spend twice the time doing something as you do watching or reading about it. Otherwise, your brain just becomes a storage unit of untested theory, not a learning machine. If you watch a lesson, don't just close it and move on. Pause frequently. Say the sentences out loud. Record yourself. Compare it to the example. Use those phrases in real conversations that same day. Write down what you learned and repeat it before bed. That's how you make knowledge enter the muscle. The same applies to every skill. If you're learning design, don't binge tutorials. Watch a few minutes, then pause. Open your software. Try it yourself. Make mistakes. Fix them. Rewatch with your mistake in mind. You will learn 5 times faster than someone who just watches passively. When you consume, you activate passive memory. When you do, you activate procedural memory, the memory of real skills. That's the memory that sticks. Watching gives you the map. Doing teaches you the terrain. And the terrain is always different from the map. If you want to learn anything, spend less time watching and more time walking. No one ever learned to ride a bike by watching someone else pedal. They learned by falling, standing up, and trying again. Your brain needs movement, not just motivation. Use the 10,000-hour rule wisely. You've heard it said, to master anything, you need 10,000 hours of practice. That's true, but misunderstood. Most people think that if they just keep doing something for years, they'll eventually master it. Wrong. If you practice the wrong way for 10,000 hours, you don't become a master, you become stuck at average. Think about driving. You may have thousands of hours behind the wheel, but you're not improving anymore. You're not becoming a Formula One driver because you're repeating, not refining. Repetition without reflection is not mastery. It's maintenance. Psychologist Anders Ericsson, the researcher behind the idea, never said, just practice. He said deliberate practice, meaning feedback, discomfort, and measurable improvement. You need to push your limits slightly each time, fix mistakes, and track your growth. If you want to master a skill, don't just repeat what's easy. Challenge yourself. Try something harder each time. Seek feedback. Compare your results with experts. Keep notes on your progress. When you work in this focused, uncomfortable, but achievable zone, your brain enters deep learning. The sweet spot between boredom and frustration. That's where mastery happens. So ask yourself daily, is today's task slightly harder than yesterday's? Did I challenge my brain? Did I improve by even 1%? If yes, you're transforming. If not, you're just passing time. Don't count the hours, make the hours count. Now, let's flip the mindset with the 20-hour rule. What if you don't want to become a master right now? You just want to get good enough to start. Good enough to hold a conversation, play a simple song, cook a real dish, or create your first video. That's where the 20-hour formula comes in. With just 20 hours of focused, consistent practice, you can go from zero to good enough at almost anything. Not world-class, not expert, but confident enough to begin. And starting is what most people never do. 20 hours is about 45 minutes a day for a month. That's enough to build basic muscle memory, conquer fear, and go from confusion to competence. It's the momentum formula. It turns a mountain into a staircase. Take an example. You've never touched a piano before. Instead of dreaming about becoming a professional musician, decide to learn one simple song in a month. Start by learning finger placement and notes. Then practice each hand separately. Combine them slowly. Add rhythm. Record yourself. Watch, fix, repeat. Finally, perform it for someone and take feedback. By the end, you go from nothing to something real. You've built a skill, created a moment of beauty, and proved to your brain, I can learn this. That belief is fuel for every future success. Most people fail to learn not because the skill is too hard, but because they never make it past the first few hours. They get stuck in self-doubt, fear of failure, and endless preparation. The 20-hour rule breaks that cycle. It forces you to begin, and that first taste of progress becomes addictive. Write down your goal. Create 20 boxes, one for each hour. Each day, fill one. Hour by hour, box by box, you build not just a skill but a new identity. Because once you prove to yourself that you can learn one thing, you realize you can learn anything. Believe in yourself. Mastery takes years, but progress starts today. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for confidence. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Just give yourself time to begin. You'll be amazed at how powerful your brain becomes once you actually start using it. Research deeply on each subtask. You've defined your goal, broken the skill into smaller parts, and started practicing, watching, and doing. But here's a question most people never ask. How much do you really know about the specific subtask you're working on? Most learners only research the main topic, not the individual steps. They say, I want to learn photography, and then search how to be a better photographer. That's too big. It's like trying to eat an elephant in one bite. Imagine you want to bake a perfect chocolate cake. Most people will watch one video, try the recipe once, fail, and feel disappointed. A smart learner breaks it down into subtasks. Mixing the batter, choosing flour, using cocoa, controlling temperature, frosting techniques. Each subtask is a tiny universe of knowledge with its own methods and mistakes. If you just try the whole process without studying these details, it's like going to war without weapons. But if you spend a few minutes researching each sub-skill, reading, watching comparisons, analyzing successes and failures, your brain starts to see patterns. Once you recognize the patterns, you stop guessing and start knowing. The same applies to every skill. Say you want to learn video editing. Most beginners open their software and start cutting clips. But deep learners research each part. Cutting for emotional storytelling, using cinematic transitions, color grading for mood, sound design for emotion, typography for tone. They don't just edit, they study the why behind every decision. They watch experts break down their projects, pause videos and ask, why did they cut here? What emotion does this create? That's not passive watching, that's dissecting. When you do deep subtask research, you avoid beginner mistakes, spot professional shortcuts, and learn 10 times more from every hour of practice. Learning without understanding each part is like building a house with your eyes closed. You might hammer some nails, but the walls won't be straight. When you study the parts, you build a foundation that lasts. Every great learner is also a great researcher, not just of what to do, but why it works, how it's built, and what makes it fail. Before you do your next task, ask yourself, what's the one thing about this step I haven't researched yet? What do top-level people know that I don't? What detail do most people ignore? That's how you go from surface level to surgical. That's how you make your learning process bulletproof. Practice in public, not in private. Most people hide when learning something new. They say, I'll show people when I'm ready. I'll speak when I'm perfect. I'll post it when it's flawless. That sounds smart, but it's actually a trap. When you wait until you're perfect, you never feel ready, you never finish, and you never truly learn. Imagine you're learning digital art. You've been practicing for months, but no one has seen your work. You hide your sketches, compare yourself to others online, and keep saying, I'll share when I'm good enough. But you don't become good enough in private. You become good enough by showing your work in public, even when it's imperfect. When you practice publicly, 3 powerful things happen. First, you feel pressure, and pressure builds skill. When someone's watching, you focus, perform better, and refine your work. Second, you get feedback, not fantasy. Real people tell you what works and what doesn't. Third, you become immune to fear. Every time you share something unfinished, your fear shrinks, your confidence grows, and your courage multiplies. Let's say you want to become a YouTuber. Most people spend months watching tutorials, deleting drafts, and waiting for the perfect setup. A smart learner records a 30-second video today, raw, honest, unfiltered, and posts it. Then does it again tomorrow. In 3 days of public action, they'll learn more than in 3 months of private practice. Other ways to practice in public: share your progress online, post your notes, join live challenges, host a free mini-class, or ask for feedback. Build in public. Speak in public. Fail in public. The fastest learners aren't the most talented, they're the most visible. Don't hide your learning. Show your journey. Speak before you're fluent. Create before you're ready. Teach before you're perfect. Every skill multiplies 3 times faster the moment you step out of the shadows and practice in the light. Learn by teaching. When you explain something to someone else, you immediately realize what you don't know. And that's powerful. Teaching isn't just for experts. It's a learning accelerator. When you teach, your brain organizes information, fills gaps, clarifies ideas, strengthens memory, and boosts confidence. The Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman used a simple technique to master any subject. He called it "explain it to a child." Learn a topic normally, then try to explain it in simple words as if to a 12-year-old. When you get stuck, go back and study that part again. Repeat until you can explain the entire topic clearly and simply. This approach, now known as the Feynman technique, has helped millions master everything from physics to finance. Why does it work? Because complicated words hide confusion, while simple explanations reveal understanding. If you can't teach it simply, you haven't truly learned it. When you teach, your brain shifts from consumer mode to creator mode, connects ideas, checks logic, and strengthens recall. The best way to learn deeply is to share what you're learning, not after you've mastered it, but while you're mastering it. Teach your progress. Explain your mistakes. Simplify your discoveries. Because in teaching others, you teach yourself twice. Teaching creates real learning. Most people only recognize knowledge, but when you teach, you have to reproduce it from within your own brain. And that's when neurons start building highways, not dirt roads. Imagine you're learning personal finance, budgeting, saving, investing. After reading a book or watching a video, take a blank page and pretend your younger sibling just asked, "How do I save money every month?" Now try to explain what budgeting means, why most people overspend, what tools can help, and why saving before spending works better. Use simple words. No jargon. If you get stuck, go back, relearn, and rewrite. Do this weekly with everything you study. You'll multiply your learning speed, retention, and clarity. You'll transform from someone who merely understands into someone who can teach. Learning for yourself is level 1. Teaching it to others is level 10. You don't need to be an expert. Just honest, curious, and willing to share. Because the brain that teaches becomes the brain that masters. Never multitask while learning. Your brain is powerful, but only when it's single-minded. We live in the most distracted era in history. Constant notifications, endless tabs, messages, and scrolling. Then we wonder why we can't remember anything. The truth is simple. Multitasking isn't a superpower, it's a brain killer. Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest athletes ever, was famous for his extreme focus. During training, no phone, no music, no distractions. Just repetition. When asked why he didn't mix it up, he said, "Why would I change it before I've mastered the basics?" That's the power of monotasking, laser-locked learning. Science proves the same thing. Your brain can't do 2 complex tasks at once. It just switches rapidly between them, losing accuracy, memory, and focus every time, a phenomenon called cognitive switching cost. Each time you glance at your phone mid-study, your brain slows down. It's like trying to boil water but turning the flame off every 10 seconds. The pot never boils. Focused learners do things differently. They close all tabs, put the phone in another room, and work on one thing at a time. They set a timer, enter deep focus, then take real breaks. This method, called deep work, helps people learn in hours what others take weeks to grasp. Bill Gates takes a think week every year. No meetings, no emails, just reading, reflecting, and writing in silence. That silence isn't emptiness. It's power. You don't need a week. Even one quiet hour a day can change your brain. When there's no noise, no switching, and no chaos, real learning begins. Your mind is a laser, but only if you stop treating it like a disco ball. Don't study while texting. Don't learn with a show in the background. Don't build your dreams while chasing notifications. Give your brain full presence, and it will reward you with speed, clarity, and retention beyond imagination. Identity beats willpower. Most people fail not because they lack discipline, but because they have the wrong identity. They say, "I'm trying to learn," or "I need to stay consistent." But when you say, "I'm trying," you still see yourself as someone attempting to change, not someone who already has. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, tells the story of two people trying to quit smoking. When offered a cigarette, one says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." The other says, "No thanks, I don't smoke." The second person succeeds because their identity has already shifted. The same applies to learning. Don't say, "I'm trying to learn guitar." Say, "I'm a musician in training." Don't say, "I'm forcing myself to code." Say, "I'm a builder. I create with code." When your identity changes, your actions follow naturally. Align your environment with that identity. Change your wallpaper to reflect your craft. Join communities of fellow learners. Rename your practice folder to My Work. Share your progress proudly. When learning becomes part of who you are, you stop needing motivation. Discipline fades, but identity lasts. Once you become the learner, learning stops being a chore. It becomes your lifestyle. Fall in love with boring repetition. Every genius, every master, every talent you admire was built on millions of dull, repetitive moments. The part where nothing exciting happens, that's the part where greatness grows. Bruce Lee said, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." His brilliance wasn't in variety, it was in obsession. The same move day after day until it became instinct. Every time you repeat a task, your brain strengthens the pathway that controls it. Over time, those pathways get wrapped in a protective coating called myelin, which allows faster and cleaner brain signals. More repetition means stronger wiring. By pure memorization, learning doesn't last. People try to force information in, but the brain keeps asking, "Where does this fit into what I already know?" If you can answer that, learning becomes much faster. If you can't, it becomes much harder. Think of your brain like a giant library. When you get a new book but don't label or categorize it, you just toss it into a random room. A week later, you want to read it again, but it's lost. That's what happens when you learn something new without attaching it to something old. Now imagine writing the book's title, placing it in the right section, alphabetizing it, and cross-referencing it with other books. Finding it becomes instant. That's how your brain works. Learning is not just storing, it's organizing. And organizing means anchoring new knowledge to old knowledge. Let's say you're learning the basics of investing and come across the term compound interest. If you just try to memorize the formula, you'll forget it in a few days. But if you anchor it to something you already know, say a growing tree, it sticks. At first, the tree grows slowly, but as the years pass, it grows faster because branches grow more branches and leaves create more leaves. It's nature's version of financial acceleration. Now your brain has a visual anchor. Tree equals compound interest. It connects to what you already understand about growth in nature. You'll never forget it. There are several types of brain anchors you can use. Visual anchors link the concept to a shape, color, movement, or pattern. For example, the CPU is the brain of a computer. Story anchors Turn it into a mini story, analogy, or scene. For example, saving money is like building a dam before the flood. Emotion anchors. Connect it to something that made you laugh, cry, or react. For example, remembering a quote because it truly moved you. Location anchors. Link it to a specific place where you learned it. For example, I read this on the balcony at sunset. Sequence anchors. Tie new concepts to previous steps in a routine. For example, I always review new vocabulary after lunch while walking. My brain expects it. Unanchored knowledge disappears, but anchored knowledge sticks, grows, and multiplies. Every time you learn something, ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Where have I seen this pattern before? Can I turn this into a picture, a story, or a comparison? That's how you stop memorizing and start remembering. That's how you build a brain that keeps what it learns. Now, let's talk about tracking your progress. Most learners don't track anything. They just hope they're improving. They practice daily but forget what they did, read articles but don't review them, watch tutorials but don't measure progress. Then they say, I don't think I'm getting better. That's not failure. It's missing data. The brain forgets improvement, but numbers don't. If you want to grow fast, consistently, and with full motivation, you must learn to track like a scientist. Imagine you're in a cold room and you light a fire to warm it up. Without a thermometer, you just guess whether it's working. Sometimes it feels warmer, sometimes not. You get frustrated and think it's not working, but maybe it is, just slowly. Now imagine you place a thermometer on the wall and record the temperature every 10 minutes. You can see the improvement even before you feel it. That's what tracking does for learning. If you're learning digital art, create a progress folder. Each week, save one drawing, label it with the date and a short note like, portrait practice, frustrated but learning shading. Write weekly reflections about what you learned, what confused you, and what improved. Set measurable micro goals like mastering eye sketches 1 week or practicing light source shading the next. Take monthly review days to compare your new work to last month's and look for patterns. I keep getting stuck with proportions. I'll fix that next. Now your learning becomes a living experiment, not random effort. Tracking builds motivation because seeing even 1% improvement gives your brain dopamine. It says, this is working. Keep going. It helps you fix mistakes faster because you stop guessing and start adjusting. It also gives you a story. You no longer say, I'm trying to learn. You say, I've grown from this to this to this. And that story builds belief. Progress is not a feeling. It's a record. Track what you do, what you learn, what worked and what didn't. Your brain may forget what it did last week, but your progress journal won't. When you see your journey written in front of you, you'll never doubt your power to learn again. You were never bad at learning. You were never slow. You were never behind. You were simply never shown how. But now you know the truth, the tools, and the path. So no more waiting. No more fear. No more I'm not ready. From this moment forward, you are the learner, the creator, the one who transforms knowledge into power. Follow even a few of these steps, and your future self will look back and say, that was the day everything changed.